Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're undertaking what might be one of our most consequential missions yet.
I think so.
We're going to try and move beyond the simple, the surface level budgeting advice,
The usual stuff, yeah.
the usual stuff.
Right.
And we're going to tackle what is probably the single biggest source of chronic anxiety and, well, economic stagnation for millions of people. We're talking about that relentless, debilitating cycle of financial subsistence.
Living paycheck to paycheck.
Exactly.
And this isn't just, a deep dive into accounting. It's more like an excavation of a systemic condition.
Yeah.
Our goal today is to give you the blueprint for reverse engineering this cycle.
Blueprint. I like that.
Yeah. And to do that, we have to dissect the whole picture. So we'll look at the structural limitations,
Right.
Inflation, rising costs, but also the mechanical flow of capital, and maybe most importantly, the profound cognitive barriers that stop so many brilliant, capable people from ever escaping this trap.
I think everyone listening, we all understand that sheer stress of seeing the bank balance hit zero before the month does. But like you said, the problem isn't just the low number, it's a whole mental state.
It is.
And our first big aha moment for this deep dive is this concept of the scarcity mindset. And this isn't just a metaphor, is it? Constant financial worry physically alters how your brain functions. It hijacks your ability to plan for the future.
That is the critical pivot for our whole conversation. We're reframing this struggle not as some kind of moral failing, but as a physiological condition.
Right.
I mean, there's seminal research, particularly from Elder Shafir and Senhil Mullainathan, that provided empirical proof of this. They showed that the cognitive load from constantly worrying about financial survival it's so heavy that it imposes a functional deficit. It's equivalent to losing an entire night's sleep.
Wait, let's just sit with that for a second. Losing an entire night of sleep.
It's actually more acute than that. They quantified the impact, and it's a functional reduction of up to 13 IQ points during that period of acute stress. 13. So when you are deeply, deeply stressed about money, your brain is, quite literally, incapable of performing complex calculations or planning for the long term as efficiently.
13 IQ points. That is the kind of detail that just stops you in your tracks and makes you reassess everything.
Yeah.
It moves the conversation away from, self-help platitudes and into neurobiology.
It does.
So if someone is struggling, they aren't lazy. Their executive function is being severely compromised by what is essentially an existential threat.
Precisely. And if we're operating with less available processing power, we can't just rely on the expectation that we should magically develop more willpower. Willpower is a finite resource, right?
Right.
And if it's already completely depleted, just managing the daily survival anxiety, then we have to design strategies that are low cognitive load.
Okay, what does that mean exactly? Low cognitive load.
It means systems that work despite the reduced bandwidth, not because we're somehow forcing ourselves to try harder.
And that necessity integrating the behavioral science with the actual mechanics of money. That's what defines the rest of this deep dive.
That's the plan.
All right, let's get into it.
So let's dedicate some serious time to really understanding this invisible enemy, this, the neurological cost of subsistence. The core concept here is mental bandwidth.
Mental bandwidth.
Yeah, think of your brain like a smartphone. It has a finite amount of working memory and processing speed. When you're under severe resource constraints, the constant anxiety, that looping thought about overdue bills, the fear of an unexpected expense, it acts like a massive, tyrannical background process eating up all your RAM.
So your operating system is just constantly running threat detection.
Exactly. And if your brain is constantly allocating its resources to hypervigilance, how to cover rent, whether the car's going to break down, how to juggle 3 different minimum payments, it drastically reduces the available capacity for everything else.
And that's not just about financial planning. That has to bleed into every part of your life.
Oh, absolutely. Forgetting appointments, struggling with a new problem at work, even just trying to maintain complex social relationships. The cognitive toll isn't just measured in bad decisions, it's measured in reduced creativity and impaired memory.
Because your brain is prioritizing immediate survival.
It has to, and that's a short-term adaptive response, It keeps you alive today,
Wow.
but it is profoundly, profoundly disastrous in the long term.
And that's why people struggle with long-term planning, with complex strategy, and I guess with impulse control.
Yes, impulse control is the big one. And this brings us to what Shafir and others called the cruel paradox.
Okay. Lay it on me.
The paradox is that the people who are struggling the most and desperately need to make optimal financial decisions, like, refinancing high-interest debt or budgeting for preventative maintenance on their car, they are physiologically the least equipped to actually execute those decisions.
So their inhibitory control, the ability to stop yourself from making a bad choice, is just gone.
It's diminished. Their working memory is full of stress variables. This is what leads to the characteristic behaviors we see, like taking out a high-interest title loan just to cover a small gap, or the infamous compensatory splurge.
Ah, the splurge. I think we all know that one. That moment you feel so stressed and deprived that you buy something small, a new pair of shoes, an expensive meal, just to give yourself that immediate short-term relief.
And it only makes the structural problem worse.
It's a classic self-sabotaging coping mechanism.
It's the brain just seeking an immediate dopamine release to avoid the present psychological pain. And these impulsive short-term relief decisions, they ironically reinforce the very cycle that people are desperate to escape. You've replaced a rational executive decision with an emotional reactive one.
And this intense sort of myopic focus where the immediate threat just consumes all your vision. That has a name, doesn't it?
It does. It's called the tunnel effect.
The tunnel effect.
Yeah, the tunnel effect is when scarcity forces you to concentrate hyperpunctually on the urgent need right inside the tunnel. So the light bill that's due in 3 days, the empty refrigerator. Everything else is ignored because it's perceived as non-essential for immediate survival.
So the brain is basically saying, I can only afford to worry about this one thing right now.
Correct. The system does not allocate resources to preventative maintenance or saving for a down payment or investing in a new skill that might lead to a higher income a year from now.
All those crucial long-term necessities.
They fall outside the tunnel of peripheral vision. This is exactly why a person with scarcity often skips an inexpensive oil change, only to face a $2,000 engine repair 6 months later.
It was short-term adaptive. They saved $50 today.
But long-term, catastrophic. And if we look at this holistically, this isn't just confined to bad decision-making. That chronic state of hypervigilance, it must have physical consequences.
Oh, I'm sure it does.
It absolutely does. It's a vicious cycle of mental and physical decline. Chronic financial anxiety floods your system with cortisol. This constant stress is directly linked to severe physical pathologies. We're talking tension migraines, hypertension, increased cardiovascular risk, severe gastrointestinal disorders.
So your body's literally breaking down because your finances are in a crisis.
Exactly. And then on top of that, you have the psychiatric conditions, generalized anxiety disorder, major depressive episodes, which further reduce your productive capacity.
Because when you're physically or mentally depleted, finding the energy to look for a better job or spend 2 hours auditing your bank statements feels impossible.
It is. The financial stress deteriorates your health, and then poor health accelerates that downward financial spiral.
Which is why the common advice, just try harder and manage your money better, is not just unhelpful, it's fundamentally flawed.
It's like telling someone with the flu to just run a marathon.
Right. You're demanding more from a brain that is physiologically depleted and literally designed to conserve energy by avoiding immediate pain.
So we have to approach this therapeutically, not punitively. The solution is externalization. We need to use structures and automation and systems to bypass the fallible human element and that depleted cognitive capacity.
We need strategies that radically simplify the necessary steps.
Exactly. Strategies that are low cognitive load. And the very first step in creating those systems is a brutal, objective confrontation with reality.
Okay, so if we accept that our starting line is a compromised mind, then the solution has to be to impose some radical objectivity. Before we can even talk about systems, we need the diagnosis.
We do.
And our sources stress the absolute necessity of a forensic financial audit, mainly because our own intuition is systematically flawed here.
That's the key psychological hurdle right there. The optimism bias. Most people caught in this cycle, they systematically underestimate their true spending and they overestimate their future income capacity.
Right. Next month will be better.
Always. But you can't manage what you refuse to measure meticulously. An audit is like an archaeological dig into your own consumption behavior.
So how do we make this audit actionable? It can't just be a quick glance at last month's bank statement because expenses are rarely, linear.
The depth is essential. We recommend analyzing a minimum of 3 to 6 months of historical transactional data. That means bank statements, credit card records, Venmo, PayPal histories, And yes, ideally, any cash receipts you have.
And why 3 to 6 months?
Because we have to capture the irregular seasonal patterns. Did you pay your car insurance in January and July? Did you have higher utility bills during the peak of summer or the dead of winter? These irregular expenses are what consistently derail monthly budgets.
That makes perfect sense. And the way we classify this spending, it has to be functional. We need to go beyond the generic tags that your banking app gives you.
We need a taxonomy that actually exposes where the leaks are.
Okay.
Our sources break down spending into 5 critical categories, and each one requires a really distinct psychological and strategic approach. Let's start with the big one. Structural fixed expenses.
These are the big rocks.
The big rocks. Your recurrent, inflexible, contractual obligations. So, rent, mortgage, health insurance, property taxes, minimum debt payments. They're fixed, but the strategy has to be aggressive intervention.
But what does that intervention look like? I mean, for most people, the idea of confronting a landlord or a massive insurance company sounds terrifying, exhausting. That's high cognitive load.
It is. So we make the process systematic. First, verify all your renewal dates. Put them on the calendar right now. Second, dedicate 1 hour to comparing rates. Maybe use a digital comparison tool to see what competitors would charge for the exact same service.
So you're armed with data.
Exactly. Even if you don't switch, you approach your current provider with real numbers. This negotiation for insurance for your internet bill can often yield significant annual saving, sometimes hundreds of dollars.
And for housing.
That's the most drastic intervention. It means evaluating the feasibility and the psychological cost of moving or refinancing or downsizing to free up maybe 10 to 15% of your income. It's hard, but it often yields the greatest results.
Okay, so next up we have the essential variable expenses.
Right. These are necessary for you to live, but they fluctuate month to month. So, utilities, basic groceries, gas for your necessary commutes. You can't eliminate them, but you must flatten the volatility.
And how do you do that?
The strategy here is twofold. First, you establish a realistic baseline average based on that 3 to 6 month history. Then you implement active efficiency measures.
Like what?
For utilities, that might mean smart thermostats or weather stripping. For groceries, this is where rigorous meal planning comes in. If you plan 8 meals for the week based on what's on sale and seasonal ingredients, you drastically reduce both cost and food waste. You can pull that quarterly average down reliably.
Okay, the third category, this is where most budgets, I think, just completely fail. Discretionary expenses.
Oh, yeah. Leisure, dining out, non-essential clothing, premium streaming services. This is the category that most exposes our internal emotional landscape.
So what's the first step here?
The first step is to identify the emotional spending patterns. Did you buy that expensive sweater after a really stressful meeting? Did you order takeout because you had a fight with your spouse? Discretionary spending often fills an emotional void.
So the strategy isn't total deprivation.
No, that's unsustainable. It's about establishing strict cash limits based on your actual available cash flow and consciously substituting high-cost gratification with lower-cost alternatives. You know, a walk in the park instead of a $50 dinner.
Now let's talk about the silent killers, the fourth category, phantom or vampire expenses.
These are the charges you genuinely forget about because they're automatically debited. Forgotten subscriptions, unused gym memberships, cloud storage you don't need, or that free trial that automatically converted to $19.99 a month.
They exploit our cognitive depletion. We're too stressed to even track them.
Exactly. It's that insidious loyalty tax in action where the default behavior is just costly inertia. The strategy here requires an exhaustive sweep. You have to open your bank account and credit card statements and scroll through every single recurring debit, especially the ones under $20.
And the rule is?
If you haven't used a service in 30 days, or if it doesn't align with your core values, it must be canceled immediately. No hesitation. These can add up to hundreds, sometimes over $1,000 a year, purely from inertia.
Wow. And finally, the category that collectively infuriates financial experts, the ant expenses.
Ah, yes. The gastos hormiga, death by 1,000 cuts.
Right.
These are the small, individually imperceptible daily outlays. The daily drive-through coffee, the afternoon vending machine snack, convenience fees at the ATM, tips on small transactions. The individual price tag is minimal, $5, $7, so the purchase feels negligible.
But the quantification is just brutal.
Yeah.
Let's take that $5 daily coffee 5 days a week. That's $25 a week. Over a year, that's $1,300.
Not including tax and tips.
Right. And $1,300 is the cost of 2 months of car payments or an entire tactical emergency fund.
And seeing that annualized total is the core of the strategy. It confronts you with the arithmetic reality of your micro decisions. It forces a cognitive shift. Is that $1,300 worth 2 months of car payments? Or is substituting it with a high-quality homemade thermos of coffee a better path to structural relief?
It's that confrontation that's the necessary prelude to actually changing your behavior.
It is. And once you've done this whole granular audit, you have to face the music. You have to calculate your net worth.
Assets minus liabilities. Even if the resulting number is negative, meaning you owe more than you own, it's vital.
It provides the objective starting line. You now have a metric for progress, and progress is the fuel for long-term motivation. And remember, assets aren't just cash. You have to include a realistic valuation of your liquidatable goods.
Which leads directly into the CTC quick win strategy.
Exactly, consumer to consumer. This is often overlooked when people think about generating liquidity. We're talking about selling unwanted, obsolete, or unused items. Electronics, furniture, clothes, through platforms like eBay, Facebook Marketplace, or local classifieds.
And this is a strategy that hits 3 targets at once.
It does. 1, it generates immediate liquidity, often enough to seed that first $1,000 tactical emergency fund. 2, it reduces physical clutter, which psychologically creates a more orderly and controllable environment, reducing that environmental cognitive load.
And 3.
And 3, it provides that crucial psychological first success. You turn waste into wealth. That sense of competence is invaluable.
So when it comes to the tools for tracking all this, we live in an age of sophisticated apps, right? Personal financial management apps that sync your statements automatically.
Yeah.
But you caution against relying solely on automation, at least early on.
Yeah. Those PFM apps are amazing for maintenance. But for the initial phase of overcoming the scarcity mindset, you need cognitive friction. For a lot of people, especially those who struggle with internalization, physically manipulating the data, even with a custom spreadsheet or a digital Kakeibo template, is crucial.
Because when you manually categorize and calculate,
The reality penetrates deeper. Technology has to serve as a guide, not a substitute, for that initial internalization phase.
okay, so we have the raw, brutal data from the audit. Now we need the architecture, the framework to actually allocate the money we have.
The system.
And this is critical. Our sources all emphasize that no single model works for everyone. The viability depends entirely on aligning the system with your individual psychology, your lifestyle, and your values.
Absolutely. So let's look at 4 dominant models, starting with the one designed purely for simplicity and accessibility. The 50-30-20 rule.
Ah, the classic, popularized by Elizabeth Warren, I think. It divides your net income into 50% for needs, 30% for wants, and 20% for savings and accelerated debt repayment.
Right. Needs are purely essential survival. Housing, basic utilities, food, transportation, and those minimum debt payments. Wants are quality of life enhancers, premium services, entertainment, dining out. And that 20% is your growth engine. Emergency fund contributions, investments, or aggressively paying down high-interest principal.
The immediate appeal is that it requires minimal cognitive load for categorization. If you have a stable middle to high income, this is a beautiful, easy framework.
It is.
But what about the person who needs this advice the most? The one in a high cost of living area or with a low income?
That is the major limitation. For someone who's truly in a financial crisis, 50% for needs might be a complete fantasy. Their rent and essential expenses might already be consuming 65% or 70% of their net income.
So in that specific context, the 50-30-20 rule serves as more of an ideal target to work toward.
Exactly. Temporarily, you might be forced into a crisis ratio, let's say 7, 8, 20, and 20.
So you acknowledge the structural limitation, the 70% for needs. You ruthlessly cut your wants down to a sustainable minimum, maybe 10%.
And still, you force that 20% into debt and savings acceleration. The goal is to aggressively work to reduce that 70% either through an income increase or a structural cost reduction until that ideal 50-30-20 becomes achievable.
Okay, so let's move to the other end of the spectrum. The rigorous, highly analytical approach, zero-based budgeting, or ZBB. This is for the person who needs total control and clarity.
Right. ZBB demands that your income minus your expenses must equal 0. Every single dollar is a worker that gets assigned a job. Savings are redefined as mandatory expenses. So if you earned $4,000 this month, you must allocate all $4,000 across all your categories. $1,500 for rent, $500 for savings, $300 for groceries, and so on.
Why is that behavioral premise income minus expenses equals 0 so effective? It sounds like simple math, but it has this massive psychological impact.
It eliminates ambiguity and procrastination. It forces pre-commitment. By making you spend the money virtually on paper or in an app before it ever leaves your bank account, you activate the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex.
That's the part of the brain responsible for high-level executive planning.
It is. You're forcing the rational brain to make all the allocation decisions before the impulsive limbic system can jump in when you're standing in front of the cash register.
This sounds ideal for analytical types or people facing critical debt situations where every single dollar has to be optimized. I know tools like YNAB, you need a budget, they're built entirely on this ZBB philosophy.
They are. They automate that cognitive friction. YNAB is famous for its rule, give every dollar a job. So if you get an unexpected $100 bonus, YNAB demands you categorize that $100 immediately before it can just be absorbed by lifestyle creep. It's an incredibly effective antidote to the tunnel effect.
Okay, now we're going to shift gears dramatically and look across the Pacific at the Kakeibo method. This is a Japanese concept that's all about mindfulness, not spreadsheets.
Kakeibo, which was established back in 1904, is essentially a financial diary. It centers on the physical act of handwriting every transaction, along with a reflective analysis of why you spent that money.
And in our hyper-digital world, that seems almost anachronistic, but it's a powerful behavioral tool. Why does handwriting trump, swiping a card and logging it in an app?
It creates vital cognitive friction. When you manually write down the date, the amount, the item, and the category, you slow down the consumption process. Swiping a card is fast and emotionally anesthetic.
Right.
Writing down $87 on frivolous Amazon purchase requires your brain to process that spending in a deeper, more painful way. It's a mental speed bump that allows your rational mind to question the necessity of the purchase.
And the structure of Kakeibo is built around 4 key reflection questions you ask yourself every month.
Exactly. At the start of the month, you set your intention. 1, how much money do you actually have? 2, how much would you like to save? Then at the end of the month, you review. 3, how much did you actually spend, categorized across their distinct pillars? And 4, how can you improve next month? It forces that retrospective analysis and intentionality.
I love that one of the unique expense pillars in Kakeibo is culture, which includes books, museum visits, education. That suggests that intellectual and spiritual growth is prioritized even when you're on a tight budget.
It recognizes that true well-being isn't just survival. It's about being a functioning, growing member of society. It reframes the sacrifice from total deprivation to strategic prioritization. It's ideal for reflective people, emotional shoppers, or anyone who responds well to analog, deliberate processes.
Okay, and finally, we have the most visceral and tangible method, one that directly addresses that psychological pain point, the envelope system.
The envelope system is the ultimate psychological hack for those high-risk categories like groceries, dining out, or entertainment. The mechanism is simple, though maybe a bit inconvenient in a digital world. You withdraw cash for these variable categories, and you place them into physical, labeled envelopes.
And when the envelope is empty, the spending stops. It's instantaneous feedback.
It leverages pure behavioral science, what's known as the pain of paying. Neuroeconomic studies, using brain imaging, have shown conclusively that the act of physically parting with cash activates pain processing areas of the brain, particularly the insula, much more intensely than the abstract use of a credit or debit card.
Cash makes the loss immediate, tangible, and visceral.
You're making the opportunity cost real again.
That makes perfect sense. Swiping a card feels like play money. Handing over a $20 bill feels like a real loss. It forces that necessary pause. But in a modern context, carrying large amounts of cash for an entire month can present some security risks.
That's a valid modern challenge, for sure. Therefore, the contemporary recommendation is often a hybrid approach. Use a digital structural method like zero-based for all your fixed bills and scheduled savings transfers. Those are low risk and benefit from automation. And then you implement the envelope system, or a virtual envelope system, which many banks now offer, for those high-risk daily discretionary categories where that psychological control is most needed. You merge the control of ZBB with the behavioral hack of the physical envelope.
All right, so once we have the budget architecture in place, we have to confront the biggest impediment to economic freedom: high-interest consumer debt. It's like a negative gravitational force.
It really is.
Every dollar that's servicing debt is a dollar that can't build your future prosperity. When you eliminate this debt, you are making an investment with a guaranteed return equal to the interest rate you just eliminated.
And debt is a psychological anchor that contributes massively to that scarcity mindset, to that 13 IQ point deficit we talked about. To neutralize it, we have two primary opposing strategies. The choice between them relies entirely on the individual psychological profile.
The question is, do they prioritize mathematical efficiency or immediate psychological victory? Okay, let's start with the strategy that focuses on that quick win, the psychological motivator, the snowball method.
The snowball method, famously promoted by Dave Ramsey, operates purely on behavior and momentum. You order all your debts from smallest to largest total balance, and you deliberately ignore the interest rates. You focus all your available surplus capital on liquidating that smallest balance first, while just maintaining minimum payments on everything else.
And the mechanism is that psychological hit. Closing an account, even a small one, is a tangible victory.
That quick liquidation releases dopamine. It increases your self-efficacy and reinforces the belief that debt freedom is actually possible. It's about building momentum, hence the snowball analogy.
So for people who crave that external validation or struggle with adherence or have a history of starting and quitting financial plans,
for them, the constant stream of small wins keeps them engaged and motivated. It often leads to faster debt repayment overall, just due to sheer persistence, even if it costs slightly more in interest in the long run.
Okay, now for the rationalist, the calculator, the seeker of mathematical efficiency, the avalanche method.
Avalanche is purely optimized for dollars saved. You ignore the balance size and you order debts from highest to lowest annual percentage rate, or APR. You attack the most expensive debt first. This minimizes the total interest you pay, and it shortens the time to debt freedom mathematically. It is the objectively most cost-efficient route.
But this carries a significant behavioral risk, doesn't it?
Absolutely. If your highest rate debt is also your largest balance, say a $15,000 credit card balance at 29% APR, it might take 18 months, maybe 2 years of dedicated effort to see that debt liquidated.
And that prolonged lack of immediate success can easily lead to debt fatigue.
And abandonment, especially if an unexpected event occurs during that long waiting period. The rational brain understands the math, but the emotional brain requires periodic proof of success.
So if we look at the comparative studies, what's the consensus? What's the better method?
Most studies suggest that the difference in total interest paid between the two methods is often marginal in realistic scenarios, maybe a few hundred or a couple $1,000s over a 5-year payoff plan.
So the individual psychological profile, which strategy they will actually adhere to, is the true determining factor of success.
Exactly. If you need momentum, use the snowball. If you are a machine, use the avalanche.
And as a strategic consideration, you can always adopt a hybrid approach.
Yes, that's a great point. Start with a snowball phase. Use it to knock out 2 or 3 small debts to build massive momentum and confidence. Once you've achieved a few quick wins and proven to yourself that you can stick to the plan, you can transition to the avalanche method for the remaining large, high-interest balances. You get the best of both worlds.
Psychological momentum leading to mathematical efficiency.
You got it.
Okay, so once we're tackling the debt, we have to immediately pivot to building the defensive wall, the emergency fund. This is absolutely non-negotiable for breaking the cycle.
Without this liquidity buffer, any unexpected event, a dentist visit, a tire replacement, a minor illness, it forces you right back to high-interest credit cards or loans, instantly restarting the entire financial subsistence cycle. We need an insurance policy against Murphy's Law.
And we break the emergency fund goal down into specific levels, starting with level 1, tactical stabilization, or the $1,000 shield.
That $1,000, or at least 1 month's basic subsistence expense, is the immediate priority after the budget is in place. It acts as the first line of defense. It's not about achieving security, it's about achieving stability.
Because when you know you have $1,000 to handle the immediate crisis, the basal level of anxiety just drops significantly.
You've shifted from reactive to proactive.
And once that shield is established and we're attacking the high-interest debt, the goal expands to level 2 and 3, strategic shielding.
Right. The standard goal is accumulating 3 to 6 months of full living expenses. This is based on job search averages and standard risk profiles. For individuals with volatile income like freelancers, commission-based sales professionals, or people in cyclical industries, experts often recommend raising that target to 8 to 12 months. That provides true resilience.
And what's the ultimate non-monetary benefit of having that full fund?
It grants you temporal sovereignty and profound peace of mind. Knowing you can survive for 6 months without a paycheck, it drastically reduces your basal cortisol levels. It frees up immense mental bandwidth, allowing you to stop focusing on survival and start focusing on growth, strategy, and design.
It's the difference between operating out of fear and operating out of opportunity.
Exactly.
And where do we keep this strategically vital cash?
It has to be accessible liquid within 24 to 48 hours, so stocks or aggressive investments are out. But it must be kept separate from your daily checking account to protect it psychologically from temptation.
So high-yield savings accounts.
HYSAs are the perfect vehicle. They're FDIC insured, risk-free, and they offer a decent return that helps protect the purchasing power of that cash against inflation. You have to treat that fund like a sacred, impenetrable reservoir.
All right, to truly break the cycle, you have to attack the financial equation from both sides. We've covered defense, expense reduction, and debt attack. Now we need the offense, income acceleration and maximizing the value of every single dollar spent.
And when we're talking about expense reduction, we have to emphasize the key conceptual distinction between strategic frugality and being merely cheap. This is a crucial mindset shift.
What's the difference? Because on the surface, they can sound pretty similar.
Strategic frugality prioritizes long-term value, durability, efficiency, and maintenance. A frugal person asks, what is the cost per use? For example, buying a high-quality pair of boots for $250 that lasts 10 years is frugal.
Whereas building 3 pairs of cheap boots for $50 each that last a total of 3 years.
It's cheap, inefficient, and wasteful. The goal of frugality is optimization, not deprivation.
That reframes the entire spending conversation. It's about being intentional with your capital allocation, not just hunting for the lowest price tag.
Exactly. Being cheap focuses on the low immediate price, often at the cost of quality or time or ethics. Frugality demands you think systemically.
Okay, so let's talk guerrilla tactics for cost optimization, starting with the biggest structural drain for most people, housing.
Housing costs are the immovable object, often consuming 35 to 50% of income. If you can't refinance, you need aggressive strategies. This could involve exploring geographic arbitrage, moving slightly further outside the central city to reduce your rent by 15 to 20%.
Or if you own house hacking.
Yes. Renting out a spare room, a basement, or even just a garage space, even $500 a month in subsidized rent can completely change your ZBB allocation and accelerate your debt freedom.
Okay, the next elastic variable is food. This is where most people can get immediate savings traction.
Meal prep and batch cooking are non-negotiable for serious savings. When you cook dinner for one night, the cost per serving might be $7. But when you batch cook a large casserole for 6 portions, the cost per serving drops to $3 or $4.
And crucially, having pre-made healthy meals eliminates that high-cost temptation of ordering delivery when you're tired or operating on low cognitive load.
Precisely. And we also need to launch a war on waste, creatively using leftovers, freezing excess, and meticulous planning to achieve near-zero food spoilage.
And back to those insidious vampire expenses. We need a strong defense against the relentless subscription economy and all those high service fees.
We use the system against itself, leverage the loyalty tax defense. Once a year, schedule calls with your major service providers, internet, insurance, phone, and ask for their retention promotions or credibly threaten to switch.
Because companies are optimized to acquire new customers, but they also have retention budgets.
And consumers who fail to renegotiate their contracts annually are penalized. You have to schedule the negotiation.
For those emotional, non-essential discretionary purchases, you mentioned a fantastic behavioral hack, the 72-hour rule.
This is a powerful cognitive intervention. For any non-essential purchase over a specific limit, let's just say $50, you impose a mandatory waiting period of 72 hours. Don't add it to the cart. Write it on a sticky note.
And that 3-day window ensures that the emotional impulse, driven by immediate gratification and the limbic system, has time to fade.
And the rational prefrontal cortex can then regain control and ask, do I need this? Does this align with my current budget and values? 9 times out of 10, you will not buy it.
All right, now for the attack strategy. Income acceleration. The limit for expense reduction is 0, but income potential is, theoretically, limitless.
You have to pursue income acceleration aggressively, categorizing potential sources by their immediacy and scalability. The lowest barrier, highest immediacy option is asset sales via C2C. Convert your clutter into capital immediately.
Next up is the time-for-money exchange model, a gig economy.
Right. Services like Uber, TaskRabbit, or food delivery. The pros are a low barrier to entry and quick liquidity injections. The cons are high wear and tear costs on your personal assets, car maintenance, gas, and low scalability. You are still trading hours for dollars.
And the net return on your time is often poor once you factor in taxes and vehicle depreciation.
So it's best used for short-term liquidity needs, like accumulating that first emergency fund.
The next tier is where true scaling begins.
Yeah.
The monetization of specialized skills.
Freelancing. If you have specialized skills in writing or design, data analysis, virtual assistants, marketplaces like Upwork allow you to access superior market rates. The returns are higher and the margins are better.
But the challenge is that this requires an upfront time investment in building a portfolio, marketing yourself, and managing clients.
It's no longer just trading time. You're building a small business.
And finally, the long-term high-sweat equity route, passive income streams.
This is where you trade a significant amount of upfront time for potential long-term scalable reward. We're talking creating digital products, a niche blog, online courses, or building an email list. This requires discipline and often takes 12 to 24 months before you see any meaningful return, but it is the key to decoupling your income from your time.
And whatever the source of this new income, the strategic objective must be ruthlessly enforced. Avoid lifestyle inflation.
Absolutely. The money generated from side hustles or unexpected bonuses must have a shielded, prioritized destination, your emergency fund or your debt principal. You have to rigorously avoid lifestyle inflation,
That tendency for discretionary spending to rise exactly in line with your increased income.
which traps people at a higher consumption level but still living paycheck to paycheck. The goal is to funnel new income towards structural freedom, not transient gratification.
So we've established the diagnosis, the budget, the debt plan, and the offense strategy. The final critical piece is sustainability. We have to return to our starting premise. Willpower is finite and fallible. How do we ensure long-term adherence to this new architecture?
The answer, unequivocally, is automation.
We eliminate the variable of human decision-making and emotion by automating the good decisions.
It is the ultimate low cognitive load strategy. Once it's set up, the system works inertially even when you are stressed or tired.
And the first critical automation is pay yourself first.
Saving is not what you do with what's left over. Saving is a fixed expense. On payday, you configure an automatic transfer from your payroll or checking account to your dedicated savings or investment accounts. This transfer happens before money is available for discretionary spending.
So you treat your future as a priority bill.
And if the money never even enters the spending account, the psychological temptation is eliminated.
Second, we automate bill payment. This sounds simple, but the consequences of failing to do this are huge.
Automated bill payment via direct debits for all your fixed and structural expenses prevents late fees, which are punitive and costly. And crucially, it protects your credit score, which is a vital asset determining your access to lower rates for mortgages, cars, and insurance. It also eliminates the huge cognitive load of tracking a dozen different due dates every single month.
And for those who are moving into phase 6 growth, we automate investing through dollar cost averaging.
Automated investing, or DCA, is setting up scheduled recurring purchases of assets regardless of the price. This eliminates the emotional high cognitive load component of trying to time the market. DCA leverages market volatility in the long-term investor's favor and ensures consistent growth without needing daily psychological input or checking market news.
It turns investing into a boring, automated chore.
Which is exactly what it should be.
Beyond the mechanics of automation, you argue that true change requires deep re-education, the power of financial culture, and cognitive restructuring.
Yes, definitive change requires fundamentally altering your internal dialogue. We have to stop framing this process as deprivation and scarcity and start framing it as prioritization and empowerment.
You are not restricting yourself. You are strategically aligning your capital flow with your most important long-term values.
That reframing transforms a punitive budget into a strategic, empowering act of self-care. It changes the narrative from, I can't afford that, to, I am choosing not to buy that because it does not align with my goal of financial sovereignty.
And this cognitive shift is greatly aided by community.
Massively. You need to surround yourself with people who share aligned, constructive financial goals, whether that's in a virtual community like the FIRE movement or a local savings group. Social validation and accountability fortify your judgment and strengthen your resolve against the cultural pressures of consumerism.
Okay, to bring this entire complex process together, let's leave the listener with a clear roadmap of the journey we've just detailed, the 6 phases of reverse engineering.
Phase 1 is diagnosis. This is the confrontation with reality, the forensic audit, and the calculation of your net worth. Phase 2 is stabilization. That's the immediate goal of building that initial $1,000 tactical shield to reduce acute anxiety.
Then, phase 3, control. Implementing your chosen budget architecture, ZBB, Kakeibo, whatever it is, to recover mental bandwidth and gain intentionality over your spending. Phase 4 is liberation. Systematically eliminating high-interest consumer debt using the snowball or avalanche method.
After that, phase 5 is security, building the full strategic shield of 3 to 12 months of living expenses for resilience and temporal sovereignty. And finally, phase 6 is growth, automating your investment, pursuing aggressive income acceleration, and moving toward true, lasting financial freedom.
What we have just walked through is not a list of suggestions. It's a comprehensive, 6-phase process of reverse engineering your economic life. It is a deliberate shift from operating in a mindset of reactive scarcity, where your brain is functionally compromised, to proactive stability and design.
This transition requires temporary sacrifice, yes, but more fundamentally, it requires deep mental restructuring and disciplined, automated tactical execution. The knowledge that scarcity imposes that 13-point cognitive deficit should be your motivation to systematize your finances and free up your mind.
The result is profound. Economic sovereignty. When you stop worrying about mere monthly subsistence, when you reclaim that lost mental bandwidth, you liberate immense human potential. You gain the ability to focus on purpose, on creativity, and on designing the life you actually want to live.
The knowledge we've unpacked today, from understanding the tunnel effect and the pain of paying cash to setting up those crucial automation layers and selecting the right debt strategy, it gives you the tools to stop being a passive spectator of your economy and become its active, empowered architect.
So, based on those 6 phases, ask yourself right now, what tiny automated step, not a huge leap, but a simple automated step will you take this week? Will you cancel one phantom expense or set up that initial small automatic transfer to savings? Start simple, start now. That's the deep dive for today.